Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Far Cry 3 released November 29th, 2012. For a lot of people, it was their first experience with the series, and it was pretty well loved. It was a big turning point for the series, for its developer publisher Ubisoft, and just really for video games as a whole. If you pay attention to gaming, you might know what we mean, but we'll get to that. Today, we just want to not complain about games and take another look back at another one we loved and why it worked and what has come of it. So today we're asking, what made Far Cry 3 a big deal? First, a quick summary if you haven't played it. In Far Cry 3, you are Jason Brody, kind of a typical party bro, rich kid guy. You're celebrating with your brother and a bunch of friends in the fictional Rook Islands, a beautiful tropical oasis where you're partying, you're drinking, you're jet skiing, beaching it up, and just having a good kind of extreme sports time. That is, until you go skydiving and essentially land into a nest of local pirates where you're kidnapped, and then you meet the iconic villain Vas Montenegro, played wonderfully by Better Call Saul's Michael Mando, and you're quickly swept up into an open-world, island-hopping adventure filled with chaos and fun. Now, as you, Jason Brody, adventures through and becomes more familiar with the local Rakyat tribe, and through both a level-up type of progression where you get more abilities and tattoos on your body, and just through the story, you see Jason Brody go from annoying, boring guy to a true, hardened warrior doing anything he has to save his friends. And, like we said, people loved it. It reviewed really well, pretty much 80s and 90s across the board review scores-wise, and according to statements and data, Ubisoft has sold almost 10 million copies of the game by the time the dust settled a few years after its release. It served as a step forward for Far Cry, the original quirky PC game that was ported and butchered everywhere, to the experimental and unique Far Cry 2 that still has a cult following today. Now, Far Cry 3 had a lot of things that just happened to nail perfectly. It's like a perfect storm of a game in gaming culture at the time. And one of the biggest reasons we gotta talk about first is, of course, how it actually played. The gameplay itself. Far Cry 3 really found a great sweet spot as an action-adventure, single-player, first-person shooter. It was of course set in a really big world, but it was nicely packed with things to do in a time where game worlds weren't always exploding with filler content and stuff. The open world was structured around finding towers to climb, which served as mini puzzles, sort of, but you'd get to the top of these radio towers, you'd disable the signal scrambler, and then more of the map is revealed and points of interest are noted on your map. There's stuff to find and, most importantly, enemy bases and camps to clear out. Clearing the big ones out made them not only fast travel points, but retaken areas that you can visit and spend money in shops and get side missions and stuff. Now, you would take back these camps and outposts in a nice hybrid kind of play style. You can go Rambo into these locations if you're skilled, but it was a ton of fun playing stealthily. You can use your camera to mark enemies and scout it out before you head in, and you can use stuff like, tossing a rock to distract a guard, and a bow and arrow for a perfect quiet headshot, or maybe just a nice up close and personal stealth kill, which they were just really satisfying to pull off, and then you could eventually level up your character to chain them together. Now, the hybrid sneaking into a base, taking out dudes using stealth, that sounds like whatever, so many open world games have this flow now, but in 2012, not so many games did, and Far Cry tied it all together so well to where it made exploring the map a little addictive. You wanted to level up your Jason Brody, who, like I said, his growing power is signified by tattoos. You have a skill tree with 3 different avenues to progress into: the shark, the heron, and the spider. Each affect different things like health, stealth and hunting, ranged, speed, stuff like that. And every big new upgrade you earned felt significant and actually useful. Most of the weapons were typical. They were fun, they worked well, the shooting felt good, but explosives were fun to use, especially when fire was involved, including the flamethrower, because fire spread pretty realistically in this game. Far Cry 2 had actually built up some advanced fire spreading technology in the games and embraced it big time. It was a big point of the whole gameplay in Africa, but Far Cry 3 took that same approach, maybe not so much to the extreme degree, a bit more passive, but the advanced fire still made a hell of a difference and really added to the destruction. You know, shooting an explosive barrel no longer just meant boom, big explosion, it meant potentially a growing fire that could spread its way right to you. The game world was also filled with wildlife, with different animals in different areas, sometimes who would even interact with one another or even with human enemies to your advantage. You could hunt these animals and use their skins and pelts to essentially grind out new upgrades to craft, like more gun holsters for all the weapons you're unlocking, more ammo pouches, hold more healing items, stuff like that. Again, it's something that doesn't sound very surprising at all, but in 2012, it was still a pretty fresh loop, and it hooked players. Now, Far Cry 3 didn't necessarily invent all of these things, but packaged it all together this way, it just made for a fun experience all around, especially with getting around the map. You had boats, jet skis, cars, trucks, all that fun stuff, but also you could find hang gliders at certain specific points in the map that you could jump off with, and it really kind of gave you way more freedom to cruise around the map. And later on in the game, Jason gets a wingsuit, which you can activate at any time, and that just made getting around even more fun. Exploring Rook Island was extremely fun, almost because everything bettered your character, or you found a collectible, or stumbled upon an animal, or got a new side mission, or maybe just saw a cool vista. Everything was engaging all the time. Not in an obnoxious or overwhelming way, but kind of an in the middle, just right feeling, where you were never really bored exploring. You'd be hiding from patrols or watching out for sharks or snakes, while also trying to take down an outpost or racing down a mountain road at high speeds. It was just like the tropical setting of the original Far Cry, but blown out to a grand scale with an immense amount of freedom. Just Cause 2 had released, just a year earlier, so it was a really good time for players exploring insanely massive locations in over-the-top and fun ways. This was kind of like first-person Just Cause. So you take all of this, just fun first-person shooting with good-feeling weapons and enemies, some hybrid stealth elements, hunting through the jungle, extremely fast vehicles, and flying and gliding through the air, and destruction, all while slowly conquering your fears and the pirates on this island, and then you combined it with some good presentation and storytelling. The game makes use of a few licensed tracks for some fun moments, most notably the memorable mission where you burn down the drug farm with a flamethrower, also just kind of torching anyone who gets in your way as everything burns and a cool song plays for no reason. This was a collaboration song between Damian Marley and Skrillex, made for like a reggae dubstep mashup that was awesome while you were doing crazy video game stuff. Did it make sense? No. Did it have to? No. The game is peppered with memorable moments like this throughout. Sometimes it's a mission or a character, sometimes it's just some goofy mess you got yourself into via the game's various systems. You know, maybe you were sneaking around, but a predator wandered into the camp and snuck up on you from behind, triggering the alarm, or maybe you're doing something and a patrol rolls up and chaos ensues. The game world was just designed for making memories, memorable moments. Along with that, the game also had an iconic villain, like we mentioned earlier. Vaas technically wasn't the big bad villain by the end, and he only actually pops up periodically throughout the game, but still, his presence is massively felt the entire time. Michael Mando's unpredictable portrayal, combined with the technology they used to capture his performance, just really worked for people. Every time he was on screen or on a radio, you just couldn't help but completely dive into his insane monologuing and his antics. It was kind of like one of the first times players were forced to just sit and watch an actor really do his thing. Vaas was memorable, he was quotable, and scary because he was actually seemingly like chilled buddy island dude, but also devilishly brutal and totally off the rails at the same time. The game was proud of the performance Mando made here, and they made sure to really prioritize it and highlight it in the game. And it seemed like it could have been a bit of a risk if he didn't quite connect, but thankfully, seemed like it really paid off. Players still talk about Vaas, and the Far Cry series has been attempting to replicate that iconic villain magic ever since, to varying degrees of success. Everybody has a favorite Far Cry villain, and some may have way more screen time than others, but everyone certainly remembers Voss, to the point where people hope to see him return in some way. All these ingredients served as the perfect storm that made Far Cry 3 memorable, and it, of course, made a lasting impact on the video game industry. You've seen these types of open world elements tossed into various games in different ways now, but of course, Ubisoft themselves kind of made it their entire blueprint, their game plans moving forward. Not only did Far Cry grow and continue these same open world styles, but they've also bled into other Ubisoft franchises as well. But unfortunately, there's too much of a good thing, and if you ask some players, some of these open worlds have now become forgettable and filled with a ton of bloat and filler content, and not even just Ubisoft games, but other games out there. It's almost like they're bigger, they're packed with more stuff, they're outlined how Far Cry 3 did it, but without the love and care and attention to all the individual stuff, you know? But going back to the humble days of Far Cry 3 is fun because you get to see that magic really take hold. The game just wants to respect you and hopes you have a ton of fun and gives you a lot of ways to do so. There's no cynicism to it, and it's nice. Far Cry 3 also had some shoehorned multiplayer, you know, that was common at the time, nobody really cared about it too much, but it also had a map editor, which is sort of a Far Cry staple now that has a cult following of creative fans. Not every Far Cry game has it, but it's a blast to build your own stuff and mess around, almost just like the developers did. Along with that, Far Cry 3 also sparked the creation of an awesome spin-off expansion game called Blood Dragon. This took the Far Cry gameplay engine and gameplay elements and absolutely drenched it in juicy 80s sci-fi techno nostalgia. The synthwave beats, robot dragons that shoot lasers, neon everywhere, cool one-liners, a RoboCop gun, and Michael Biehn, Terminator's Kyle Reese himself, voicing the main character. It was charming and fun and really exposed players to a cool new vibe and just more Far Cry fun. And really, how DLC and extra content isn't always just something to milk you for more cash, it can be something awesome that really asks and earns your hard-earned dollars by just begging to entertain you. Far Cry 3 and the team that pulled it off, Ubisoft Montreal, really gave us something awesome here. We still look back at the whole experience and hype pretty fondly, and although we check out and fairly enjoy Far Cry games since, none have really been anywhere near as groundbreaking and as fun as 3 initially was. Can they still top it? We hope so. We're willing to wait and see, but today we just wanted to talk about Far Cry 3. We love this game, as you can probably tell, so now we want to hear from you guys in the comments. What's your favorite Far Cry 3 moment? What's your favorite weapon? Do you have a crazy story in that game world? And then also, if you got nothing else, definitely just let us know your favorite Far Cry game in general. If you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with us and just talking about a game that we love, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. We would really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing, man, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.